The beautiful orange glow is fading now some. But back out, one of my favorite places here. Just wanted to talk a little bit about something today. Why it is that so many videos we see from people about relationships in the Philippines and stuff tend to focus on the negative stuff. And I realized the other day when I was trying to make a video answering someone's question about something that, you know, it's like the subject of like meeting, you know, the right woman. There's always going to be an element of chance or hit and miss, trial and error, and something like that, because it happens in so many different ways. And that's something that it's hard to tell someone. You can give generalized advice and say, well, it's, you know, there are advantages to doing it online, advantages to doing it over there in person if you have the time and the money to get there and spend the time to do it. You know, obviously, especially if you've already decided you're just moving to the Philippines for some other reason, and then you think, well, after I'm there, I'll find someone. But when it comes to making a success of a relationship, you know, the real work starts after you find the person, because there's no way that you can just find some person and say, okay, this is it, this is the perfect one. No matter who you end up with, you're going to have to put in some work. And that's where you really need, you know, the advice kind of is after you're already in the relationship. How do you make it last? Because meeting people is easy. You know, if you go to the Philippines and you have any desire at all to meet someone, and you're hanging out in places where there are women who are single and interested in finding someone, sooner or later you're going to make some kind of connection. If you're over there and you're hanging out with other expats and so forth, and their girlfriends or wives, they're always going to be, you know, looking to help you hook up with someone because, you know, they've got friends who say, oh, I like that nice American that you're with or whatever, and does he have any friends, you know, or whatever. And that's something that is kind of like the easy part in a lot of ways. People tend to make it complicated by thinking, okay, I have to have a certain specific thing, a certain specific set of requirements or qualities, and that person has to tick all those boxes. But the only way, you know, the only people I think who really have that kind of attitude are the people who are just determined that they're not going to change for anybody. And right there, you're kind of dooming a relationship. Because no matter who you get involved with, if you're going to make it a success and make it last, you can't just say everything's going to be my way, I know what I like, and I have to find some person who is going to 100% comply with my wishes or needs all the time. It's insane for someone to think that they can do that. If you're hiring someone, you know, and you tell them, look, this is what you have to do, that's fine. They'll do their job to get their money, you know. But if you're talking about an actual relationship with a real human being, it's not going to happen, you know. And that's why the things that most expats, you know, in the Philippines, like the vloggers and YouTubers and stuff, talk about the things they do, is because the things they talk about are things that there's no guarantee of success, you know. So you're not promising someone that if they follow this advice, you're going to succeed. If it's a negative thing, like say, don't get involved too deeply with someone right away, things on how to protect your money, to keep people from being able to take your money, and you know, giving your money to their families and things like that. Those kind of things, it's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's something where by following that advice, the kind of success that you're going to have is kind of like just that you won't get taken advantage of. It's not like you're going to succeed at some specific task. So you've got the general advice on how to not get involved. You know, a lot of the advice you get from a lot of the YouTubers and stuff over there isn't really on how to find the right one and make it a success. It's how to avoid losing everything to the wrong one. So in that situation, you know, following their advice actually kind of, you know, it's kind of like a negative outcome of getting out of a relationship. But you can say, well, it was a success because you avoided getting involved with the wrong one. And that's the kind of stuff that's easy to do. And a lot of the information is very useful stuff. You know, immigration updates, things like that. You know, basic things about where to live, how to find an apartment. You know, those are things that very practical, simple, physical tasks that don't have anything to do with making a relationship last. And that's where the hard work comes in. You know, I realized that the other day when I was talking about how I met my wife and everything. Honestly, you know, the bizarre way in which things took place. I mean, it would be impossible for me to explain how bizarre some of this stuff was. And yet, if any of those things hadn't happened exactly the way they did, the things I went through, and even looking back on it in my life, some of the other different things that placed me in the position I was at the time when all this stuff happened, you know, I mean, I look at it more as like, almost like divine providence or destiny, you know? This is where I was supposed to end up, and with the person I was supposed to find. When I'm with my wife, I mean, you know, we're coming up, we've been together for over 9 years now. We've been married for, you know, like probably about 8.5 years, a little more probably. And she's been over here in America for almost 7 years, 6.5. And when I'm with her, I realize just how perfect the situation it was, you know, that this is the person that if I had sat down and made up a checklist, I would not have been able to do as good a job as the way it worked out, you know? There is no such thing as a, you know, perfect woman. You can find somebody and say that they're perfect for you, though. Everybody's going to have little issues and problems. But when people talk about going to the Philippines to find a woman, a lot of times you'll hear them talking about they don't want to have a Western woman. You know, talk about all the problems and the things that they want and their attitude problems. And yet it's so funny. You get some of these guys who have made a YouTube living whining about Tampo, for instance, or the way that Filipinas handle confrontation and the various different mechanisms they use to avoid having just a straight up, you know, straight on discussion about something. You can't have it both ways, you know? I mean, do you want a Western woman or an Asian woman or a Filipina, you know? Because if you want that, then you can't complain that they act like that. It's, you can't say, well, I want a Filipina or a traditional Asian woman or something like that, and yet at the same time say, well, I want them to handle things like a Western woman. That's insane. You can't have it both ways. If you want a Western woman and somebody who handles confrontation and arguments and stuff like a Western woman, so that you can have a big blow up about it and talk it all out in a certain way, and get it behind you instantly, one way or the other, then fine, get a Western woman, you know? You can't go to the Philippines and say, well, now I'm pissed off at them because they're not acting like a Western woman, when you went to the Philippines looking for someone who was not a Western woman. What kind of sense does that even make, you know? You're gonna have to be adaptable and be able to, you know, learn how to interface with people, interact with them in a different way. It's not just, if you're thinking you're gonna move over there and make up a checklist of people who are going to do exactly what you want and you're not gonna have to change and I'm 60, 70 years old, whatever the hell it is, and set in my ways, and I'm not changing for anybody, then good luck finding a successful relationship, you know? I mean, if you want to have a successful relationship, then you have to do the things that a successful relationship requires. And no matter where you're at, whether it's a Western woman, an Asian woman, or whoever, that involves you being able to bend and adapt and let the other person have their way sometimes. And a lot of guys, they just don't want to do it. Everything's going to be their way, God damn it. And they're going to tell you this is how it is. And if you don't like it, hit the road. And someone like that is obviously not going to have a successful relationship. Unless by a successful relationship you mean finding some meek little girl who put up with your temper tantrums and let you have your way all the time. That's no way for somebody who's supposed to be a mature 60, 70-year-old man to be acting. So why would you do that, you know? But that's the problem with giving people advice. There are certain things that you really can't tell somebody specifically how to do. Meeting the right woman, it happens so many different ways for so many different people. You can tell somebody where to go, where they might have a chance of finding people who are nice or interested in looking for, to be with someone. But once they found them, then that's where you need the advice. And that's where you need to be able to adapt and just be a mature person. So that's the reason why most of these YouTubers, they'll tell you how to meet somebody, where to go, how to do it, how to date, But when it comes to actually making a relationship last, they don't want to tell you those things because a lot of guys aren't looking to hear the real answer. And the real answer to that question is that you have to be able to change and adapt and be a good person and reasonable and not expect everything to be your way all the time, And a lot of guys, they don't want to hear that. So you're trying to give the only possible advice you can give that is real and makes sense to people who aren't interested in hearing that particular kind of advice. And obviously, it's a whole lot cooler to be, some guy who's running around, in an exotic foreign paradise, dating all kinds of LBFMs, as some people like to call them. And that way you can look cool, You can say, look at me, I'm a man's man. living the man's dream, And totally avoiding the idea or the fact that a real man doesn't necessarily act like that. But that's what a lot of people want to do. And for those people, the only advice you can give them is trivial stuff about things that don't really make a relationship last. So it's hard, Trying to give somebody advice with some kind of guarantee of success is really hard. So most people stick to giving advice about things that are easy, because anybody can tell you where to go and meet someone. Anybody can tell you, how to pay for a cab, how to not get ripped off, how to tell some girl no, you're not giving money to her family. Those things are easy because in a lot of ways the measure of following that advice and having success with it is to not have a relationship that lasts, to end a relationship. And if you're looking for advice on how to do the opposite, that's just something that a lot of people don't want to tell you because it's just not cool. It's just not cool to tell somebody that you have to be a mature person who doesn't always get your own way, who doesn't think that if you let your wife have her way and decide something, that you're not a real man and you're letting them walk on you or something. Those of us who are mature adults, we understand that giving sometimes for the sake of getting along, and not insisting that every single thing be our way all the time, is the mature way to act when you're in a relationship with another human being. It's just not cool, The things you have to do to have a successful relationship are not going to make you look like some badass, tough guy or something. They're going to make you look just like an intelligent human being with a heart, and who knows how to take care of other people instead of always worrying about himself. But see, that's where the problem arises, is that a lot of guys, when they move to the Philippines, they're at a state in their life where the only thing they can really afford to do is worry about themselves, and that's the primary thing on their mind. In the back of their mind all the time, it's, I have to find a way to preserve my nest egg, to make sure I don't get overextended financially, and have to go back home, because they know going over there they've only got a certain amount of money to deal with. Maybe they have a tiny bit of savings, for a major catastrophe, but other than that, they've got a certain amount of money that they have to live on, and the primary goal in their life is to make sure that it doesn't get messed up, And when you have that kind of overriding concern in the back of your mind all the time about not being used or taking advantage of, it just makes it hard to have a successful relationship, because everything that happens, you're always wondering, well, how is this going to impact my bottom line? And that's, I think, is why it's kind of hard, just because of the unique situation a lot of guys are in when they go to the Philippines to try and find someone. It's not the same as like trying to find somebody when you're here in America, for instance, and you're working, you've got a job, and you can go out and make more money, and you feel like you're financially secure. When you're at the end stages of your life, you've retired, and you know that there's not really any more money coming in from any other source except what you've already locked in as a retirement account or a pension, Social Security, something like that. There's always that overriding concern about making sure you don't lose it. And that's why a lot of guys gravitate toward YouTubers who are going to tell them how not to lose it, how to protect that and protect themselves. And the sad thing is that when it comes to having a really, true relationship that is not some kind of just a transactional relationship, you have to give. You have to not be afraid. And that's hard for people, especially when you're in a situation where if you lose it, you're screwed. It's hard to take that leap. But any real relationship, you can't hold back. You have to be committed to the relationship 100%. And it's really hard. When you move to another country, you're in a new situation, limited funds, you can't afford to fail, and you don't really know everything there is to know about someone, perhaps. You got to have you have to have full commitment. And that's the thing with any relationship that's going to last. You have to be fully committed to it. And if you're holding part of yourself back in reserve, just in case, that right there tends to doom a relationship. So that's why most YouTubers focus on stuff that doesn't really require them, you to have success to follow their advice. And that's why it's so hard to tell somebody, how to have a really successful relationship. Because you have to make sure that that person is willing to do what's required, which is give of themselves. And a lot of people, that's just not what they want to hear, you know. And especially some of these guys want to move to the Philippines and live their dream life that they've always dreamed of and never had the chance to do before, running around with a lot of cute young girls and stuff that they feel like they missed out on in their earlier life. And once again, if you're looking for a real serious relationship, that's just a totally different thing.